Hi, my name's Rich Hanlon. I'm your Adirondack nature guide. I'm heading back to the trails behind our house this morning to do some trail maintenance as needed. Maybe there's no trail maintenance that needs done, but I'm going to take a little walk through the forest and, like I said, see if there's any trail maintenance that needs done, but also I'm going to saunter. I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to look, I'm going to listen. One of the first things I'm noticing this morning is that there are at least 2, maybe 3 dog day cicadas singing in the canopy level of our forest here. And I don't know about for you, but for me, it's always one of those nostalgic sounds that indicates. There goes one. Sounds like a buzzsaw. It's one of those sounds of insects that seems to indicate that we're entering into the latter end of summer. And that, well, when I was younger, it meant savor the last several weeks or better part of a month before school was to start again. Well, let's head down into the woods, check out the trails, see what's going on in nature's community today. Well, this is going to be an easy one. This is just a branch that fell from the canopy, and it's just kind of a dangler branch right now. So I'm going to pull it, and as I pull it, I'm going to step away from it. That way I don't get whacked in the head with it. There we go. First bit of trail maintenance complete. And I'm sort of making a little brush pile here. It's in its early stages, but when we have little brush piles like that along the path, especially in the spruce fir forest, it tends to provide some good habitat for our resident snowshoe hares, which do appear on occasion. I saw one here just the other day when I was walking the trails. They don't typically like to be seen, so it's a special surprise when I do get to see one. But just creating some good habitat for a snowshoe hare to hunker down for a while. Here's a place where a balsam fir fell several months back in ways that it's kind of encroaching on the trail a little bit. So I'm just going to cut it back like right about here. And we'll actually take it up the hill, and I'm going to add it to our snowshoe hare brush pile. Now let's just take this up to our snowshoe hare brush pile that we're creating. There it is. I'm gonna put this kind of just like that. And it makes for a couple kind of spaces where it can hunker down beneath the green branches. It makes them feel safe. One of the things you might notice about my trail as we walk through the woods is the trail itself is not completely clear of vegetation. There's some smaller ferns. So there's a small red maple popping up, and some other herb level plants in the forest. There's some Canada Mayflower, all actually growing up from the middle of the trail. And I like to leave some vegetation even on the surface of the trail itself, because whenever we get storm events with a lot of water flowing down the hill, it actually does not flow very swiftly down the hill, because the roots of the vegetation and even the plants themselves, they help to hold the soil in place, and that's important. And I also allow this to happen because, well, this far north we don't have very many ticks. I always have my tick prevention going on. My pants tucked into my socks, my shirt tucked into my pants, and I always check. But since there are relatively few ticks up here, I like to leave some of this vegetation on the path, so that way, like I said, it holds the soil in place and helps to maintain a more healthy ecosystem for myself and for all the other wild neighbors who call this place home. You'll notice some quick twists and turns in this next stretch of trail, and this is my attempt to build the trail in a way that is in kind of a sense of harmony with the forest, especially the plants and the trees in the forest. I prefer to let the trees determine where my path will go rather than making a path straight through a forest in a direct trajectory. If I did that, I might have to cut down some trees. I'd rather work around the trees and live in harmony with the trees. So that explains what you see here. Here's a place along the trail where one of our red squirrel neighbors has created a midden. Midden is a place where they have stored a bunch of pine cones under the ground. But this particular spot is not just a midden, it's also a dinner table. If we look at the top of it, there's some holes around the sides, but if we look at the top of it, there's a place where it's fairly obvious that one of our red squirrels has taken some of its white pine cones that it's harvested and is taken them apart here and picked the tiny seed out from between some of the scales. So this is not just a midden, it's also a dinner table. And as I pick up this white pine cone, I'm noticing I have some of the sap stuck to my fingers. It's a little bit sticky. I kind of like it. It also smells very good, almost citrusy. There's a lot of things in the woods that are worth taking a whiff. The trail was rerouted here maybe about a month ago when that big pine fell. And already where the trail used to be, right here, you can see these wood ferns are just filling in beautifully. It's because of the way that Aaron and I maintain this trail, it doesn't take much time at all for nature to take it back, to revitalize the trodden landscape. So that's encouraging to see. This is one of my favorite locations along our forested trails because of the memories that are attached to it. It was a couple weeks ago. I was standing in this exact spot. It was a rainy morning, a kind of drizzly day. The water was cascading through the tops of the trees down to the forest floor. And I came to this spot and I heard a brown creeper. Now, brown creepers, I know, like to stay close to the trunks of trees. It sounded close. I looked to my left, and there's one moving through the trees towards me. And then it landed on the trunk of this particular tree. I stood there and I watched it. And I expected that it might fly right across the trail in front of me and land on that tree over there. But it went from that tree and landed on my jacket. So it landed on my jacket, this little bird. It looked up at me and I looked down at it, kind of tilted its head a little bit. And then it continued to work its way up the front of my shirt, up where my zipper is, all the way up to the collar of my jacket. And only then did it fly over to the next tree in the forest. I felt like the luckiest tree in the forest that day. Oh my. So that's a memory that is attached to this particular spot between these particular trees that I will always cherish in my mind and in my heart. And it just goes to show that when there's a forest area that you regularly spend time in, it's very special to you. A lot of times it's the memories that we store up in places like those that make those places just extra special. So I wonder, what is a forest area that you enjoy spending time in, and what special memories are connected with that place for you? Here's a place along the path where we have a lot of different kinds of mosses. There's a wet a seep that comes off the hillside here, and we have an abundance of mosses and other kinds of plants growing up, like this meadowsweet between them. And since the ground is wet here, I wanted to be careful not to trample it and make it a muddy mess. So I think we took a very easy solution. We got a couple, 1, 2, 3, 4 rocks, and then we propped these boards on top of the rocks. So now we can walk right across it, and we are causing very minimal human impact in this area. So I can come here, sit here, watch the ants and the wood frogs and toads that eat the ants. It's fun to watch this whole little ecosystem just abound with life because of the wet ground, the mosses, and the plants that are in this special place. This next stretch of our trails goes past a small creek, and so we're careful to keep our trail at least about 5 feet away from the edge of the water, and to help to maintain a nice buffer zone of vegetation, mosses and plants and trees to help hold the soil along the creek's banks in place. Now, as we turn away from the creek, we're heading back up the hill. Before we bought our 3 acres of Adirondack paradise in 2020, there was some logging and a small forest fire that occurred in this particular corner of our property. And both us and Mother Nature have been working to make the best of it. Just up the hill here, there's, we'll see in a moment, a very lush, almost meadowy area, a lot of blackberries. We've had mourning warblers, and we've had indigo buntings. These are birds of open field edges, but they're only there because that's the only place they have habitat. It's because of the fires and the logging. And we've also had blackback woodpeckers working, especially these white pine trees that have fire damage. The fire damage weakened the trees to the point where there's wood-boring beetle larvae in the trees now, and that is a delicacy for a black-backed woodpecker, as well as hairy woodpeckers. So we have a lot of woodpeckers in this patch of forest now too, because of the fire disturbance that happened here. Looking behind me here, you can see the vegetation that emerged very thick in response to the logging and the fire that happened at this corner of woods. And it actually provides a very good diversity of habitats between this open forest, field edge, shrubby area, and the spruce fir forest that is very shaded behind me. And so that makes this spot between these two habitats a great place to do some sitting in the wilderness. Well, our trails are clear. Good habitat is being created. Now it's time for breakfast. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.